Welcome, everybody, and thank you so much for being here with me today. I know that you all have busy schedules, and the fact you're taking the time means so much to me. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Andrea Miller. I'm a LinkedIn top voice, whatever that means, and I am also a global leadership coach and consultant. I've worked on 3 continents and with more clients in more than 50 countries. And I also am a bit of a mindset geek because I've had to spend so much time trying to figure out my own and how to manage it better during difficult times. And I think we are in such a time right now, which is why I decided to do this presentation. Mindset is something we could talk about for hours, but for the purposes of today, I've just narrowed it down to five pretty narrow areas that I feel like they relate more closely to what's going on in the world, particularly specifically AI and this period of exponential change that we're in. So today I'm going to talk about, again, 5 areas. One that I call courageous curiosity. The other is adaptability. Another is becoming an empathetic leader. The fourth is about visioning, a strategic vision when we're dealing with so many short-term issues. How do we maintain that strategic vision? And then finally, the last one is collaborative innovation. We know that this is a period of great innovation, but how do we do it better? How do we do it together? So with all that in mind, I'm just going to dive right into curiosity. Hopefully you're all curious now what this is going to look like. When I talk about curiosity, it's one of those things that I think doesn't get enough attention. And I don't know about all of you, but for me, I've worked in a lot of places where curiosity is not something that's rewarded. Particularly in bigger bureaucracies, which I've had the distinct pleasure of working in, it's just, we start doing things the way we do things. And when people start asking too many questions, it can be easily shot down. So sometimes you do have to be a little courageous and start asking these questions. But for all of you, for the leaders out there, this is something to be thinking about and focusing on, is how do we encourage greater curiosity? How do we get people to start asking the tough questions that'll help them be better at their jobs? And more importantly, I think, feel better at their jobs, because curiosity is just such an innate part of ourselves. It's a fundamental piece of who we are. All you have to do is look at any child, just think about their favorite word, why? Why? And we don't ask that anymore. We just say, okay, and kind of, grumble off and go do what we're told to do. And I think we're at a period now where we need to start asking more questions and start thinking about what is underneath, the task that we have, and how can we do this better? Because I can guarantee you the people around you, the companies around you, they're starting to ask more questions. They're starting to be a little more curious because the competition has gotten so great. So this is why curiosity is such a key mindset to have in this day and time. And then why we need to encourage it more. When we have this curious mindset, because it is such an innate part of who we are, it's a way of creating a reward system in us too. When we are curious, we get that dopamine hit. It motivates us, to find out things. It's just something that underlies who we are as human beings. So we really want to start encouraging that from our teams. And to do that, we need to start finding ways, and forgive me, my brain is not working as well as I'd like today, so you're going to see me looking at my notes occasionally. But we want to find ways to encourage that fundamental drive with folks. So, creating ways for them to be thinking differently, creating challenges, curiosity challenges, where we're asking questions, creating brainstorming events. One of the things about brainstorming events that I always want to warn people about is that, we as human beings, brainstorming can be difficult because we can shut people down in those too. So you want to make sure you're creating some norms around those brainstorming events. But the goal is really to be thinking about how can we think a little bit differently going into things now. It'll make you a more effective leader, and it'll make your team happier. So I think curiosity is really a mindset for all of us to be thinking a little bit differently about. The second mindset is really one of my favorites. I often jokingly say I have to say this at least once in every presentation, but I think the probably one of the most important things we can do in this day and time, in this age of AI, is be more adaptable. And being more adaptable is there's so much underlying adaptability, but we really want to be more willing to take chances to do things that feel a little bit uncomfortable because it's not what we normally do. Adaptability is hard. It is seriously hard. And I say that as somebody who's moved to different countries and continents and has had different jobs and careers. It doesn't necessarily make it easier, but you have to be willing to be comfortable in the discomfort, which is not an easy thing to do because our bodies, we're just set up to protect ourselves from danger and for things that are going wrong. And adaptability can often feel like that. We can often feel if we're trying a new thing, if we're taking on a new challenge, we can often feel like, that danger alert, that warning sign goes on, and we're just like, oh, I'm not doing that. And the problem is we don't have a choice anymore. Things are changing that quickly or will be soon. They may have not reached your organization yet, but I can guarantee you the trajectory of AI, there's a lag for a lot of people, but it's coming soon and it's changing how we work. I mean, we've had enough changes already, after COVID with remote work and everybody being on Zoom or Teams or whatever they're on, but we're continuously adapting at a rate that our brains weren't designed for. So we need to be aware of who we are at our core, structurally, and we also just need to be aware of the importance of this and our motivation for wanting to adapt and for wanting to make these changes, because that would really help in this process. So adaptability is just something I talk about probably way too much, but I think it's so critical as we move forward. So again, when we look at adaptability, it's this battle between our prefrontal cortex, that's basically that planning side, making sure we're doing the things we need to do, and that amygdala that's basically putting on the warning lights, that fight, flight, or freeze response that's telling us don't do this. And how do we manage that better so that we can adapt to the situation that we're in? And it's just, it's a matter of managing to some degree our neuroscience. But it's important to recognize that all these things are happening sometimes underneath the surface and we don't even realize that they're happening. And the more aware we can be about these things, the better off we'll be in terms of how do we manage that and how willing we are to raise our hand to new challenges as they come up. And they're coming up fast and furious, and we really want, if we want to succeed, we want to be the person who just raises the hand and says yes, because that's going to be the person who really is going to thrive in this time of change. But I get it, it's not easy. So we really want to start thinking about how do we do this better? We know this change is coming. How do we adapt to adaptability to the changes that are coming? So for me, a lot of that is I do a lot of scenario planning. I think a lot about what could happen. And it's something I would suggest you might want to think about with your team to start thinking forward, start getting into these uh, challenges where you're together thinking through what might happen and how do you manage that. I often refer to this psychologist out of NYU who her work I really love, Gabrielle Oettingen. And one of the things I love about her work is she's come up with this brilliant acronym that I just like to say, which is called WHOOP. And that's W, wish, O is for outcome, O is for obstacle, and P is for plan. And for a lot of us, we get the wish and the outcome, and the dopamine hit happens, and we're so excited, and it's all good. But we forget that there are going to be some obstacles along the way and that we have to plan for what's going to happen. And we need to have contingencies, if then kind of scenarios, so that we're ready. We're ready for when we have to adapt. Not only are we ready, but we know how to do it. So it doesn't take us by surprise and derail us in the process. So again, we want to make sure we're going through these exercises with our team, that we're talking about these things. Sorry, I'm just looking at my notes. We're creating adaptability workshops where we're looking at ways of building learning, because that's a big part of adaptability. One of the things as human beings, we want to feel competent. So if you want people to adapt, set them up for success. Create a psychologically safe environment where they can take chances, get things wrong, and also give them the learning they need to actually do things well. So these are just some of the little helpful hints that I would suggest for you and your team, because this is going to make such a huge difference in your life. Not only if you're, no matter where you are in the organization, but particularly if you're a leader, you really want to be you really want to be leading. You really want to be at the front, at the back, saying, "Yes, I'll take this challenge on." But it's super hard when we think that we're being threatened by whatever is happening at the moment. So I would just start getting that adaptability muscle going. Start practicing working through change, how you're going to respond to it, and just how you can lead through it to support your team. And related to that is the third mindset that I like to talk about, which is empathy and becoming an empathetic leader. Empathy is probably an underrated skill in leadership, but I don't think we have to look too far back. And I hate to bring this up again, but during COVID, this was a really big thing. And not that what's coming is going to be like COVID, but change is hard for people. And during COVID, everybody would refer to the CEO as the chief empathy officer. Because when we go through this change, we really need to feel heard. We really need to feel listened to. We really need to feel like somebody's hearing us and empathizing with whatever is going on for us. And if you want to be a strong leader today, you're going to have members of your team who are not going to manage to change well, who are not going to feel comfortable dealing with some of these things that are coming up. And you need to find a way to hear them. And you need to find a way so that they feel heard. So, one of the things that I like to talk about is really active listening, really listening to them and feeding back some of their words to them so they know, so they feel acknowledged that you have heard what they're saying. And the thing about empathy is it's good for us. It's good for us and it's good for the other person. There's a release of oxytocin that's related to it, so that feel-good hormone. So we just feel better when we're more empathetic with folks. And it reduces conflict in the office. It's good for people if you're taking the time to listen and hear each other. It takes down the temperature a little bit. And I think we all know when things get a little stressed, when things get a little difficult, people can get a little frazzled and may say or do things that they might regret. So when we take a more empathetic approach to our leadership, to our cultures, when you're modeling that behavior, and believe me, there's a whole process of mirroring how we act with one another. So if you as a leader is modeling that behavior, it's something that the teams, the people around you will do too. So it's really critical to be thinking more empathetically about your teams, about how you interact with people, and about how you can encourage that with them. And some of the ways you can do that, again, I think, a lot of this is about emotional intelligence. It's about being self-aware, being aware of others, and helping them to understand and self-regulate their emotions in the process. So you'd probably want to start considering some sort of emotional intelligence training for your team so that they know how to do this and they're more aware of the reasoning behind it. That it's not just something that you think is a good idea. It's something that's research-based and that really will be helpful for everyone. And again, practicing active listening, this is not something that comes naturally to most of us. So we really want to be encouraging folks to intentionally practice it, to see what it feels like to be quiet and not say anything while somebody else speaks for 20 seconds, for a minute, for 2 minutes, but to really challenge themselves to just listen. And then, if possible, feedback some of the words to the person so they know that they're heard. So these are just some of the things that, sorry, I'm just taking a quick look to make sure I know I missed something, but the last piece is empathy mapping and just making sure that, we are paying attention, visualizing, the empathy within our workplaces. But I think empathy is just something that isn't on our radar right now, but should be, because I do think it's going to get increasingly difficult for people to manage in our offices as they get more uncomfortable with the change that's coming. So, next thing I would want to think about if I were a leader in an office at this time would be strategic visioning, because it's very easy to get caught up in the now. Everything's happening so quickly, the change is happening so quickly. We're all trying to figure out how to use AI, or, most recently, if you look at what happened with Microsoft and CrowdStrike, these cyber threats, there's so much going on that we never had to deal with in the past. So, we're on this high alert mode anyway, and it's hard to really be thinking about the future. When everything is happening now, how do we have that North Star, that future plan that really inspires people? Strategic visioning isn't only about, creating those benchmarks and knowing where we're going, which is so critical too, but it's also inspirational and aspirational for your teams. And people need that. I remember years ago, I was working for a scientist when I was at the UN, and he was brilliant. He was absolutely brilliant, but only those of us in the inner office really knew about that. The other 70 people on the team didn't know, and he wasn't always the easiest person to get along with. And I always told him that he needed to be more front facing with everyone because it was something that they needed to hear. They needed to feel the inspiration that I felt, that everybody else who were able to hear what he was saying felt. So when we create that, when we have that vision, when we're able to share that with people in a way that really inspires them, it just makes such a difference in the workplace. So it's something I would encourage you to be thinking about. How do you hold this vision? This vision for the future that may very well change because everything is changing so rapidly around us. But how do you hold on to that while also managing the day-to-day fires that you have to put out? So it's just something to be thinking about the big picture, thinking about how to do the visioning forward. Forgive the noise. I hope you can't hear it as loudly as I can. But it's just something we want to be thinking about, is that roadmap, so that people are more aware that there is a reason for what they're doing. So it's not only beneficial for your team, though, it's also useful for you because it'll influence all the decision-making points you have coming up. Even if you're dealing with the day-to-day, why are you choosing this as opposed to that? Because you have this longer term vision that's really important. And again, this is where the scenario planning can come to effect. That can really have an impact if you have this vision of what you want to occur. Then you can start scenario planning around what it'll take to get there, and start thinking through all the different scenarios given what's happening right now and what could happen tomorrow. And I do this a lot. It's just how my mind works. I'm always thinking through a few steps ahead, particularly now with AI. What is this going to look like as we move forward? And how is this going to impact people? And what is that going to mean to individuals' careers, and what is it going to mean to our world in general? And I think it's helpful when you have a bigger vision to be thinking that way. Okay, this is where I want to head. This is what's happening now. What do I need to be doing in between to get there? So just some things to be thinking about, because there's very real implications as a leader in terms of team alignment, trust building. People want to know. They want to know that there is a vision. They want to know that there's a reason. So the more you can give that to them, the better off you'll be. And then you can do that in various ways. One way is just having visioning workshops. Really talking through this with your team, making them part of the process. This vision mapping. I think also regular strategy meetings. Going back to my boss, he wasn't having that conversation. But I think it would have been so critical if we had this more regularly so that people understood that their work mattered because of this bigger vision. So these are just things to be thinking about as you move forward. And then related to that, and the final last mindset that I would like to talk about is collaborative innovation. So we are in this place now where innovation is just the word of the day, and it's so possible. We are all innovators. All we have to do is get on our computer, open up ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, Meta. Pick one. Just pick an AI bot and a large language model, and just put in some ideas and see where it takes you. So the opportunity for innovation is is immense, but the problem with it is it can become an echo chamber. We need to make sure we're testing it or having reality tests on it. And that's why I think it's really critical to be thinking about collaborative innovation as one of the reasons. The other reason is we need diversity of opinion. I think we've proven more than once with these large language models that there is a level of bias, and obviously we're not getting the kind of richness of ideas that we get if we're bringing members of our teams together, no matter where they are in the world, particularly if they're in different parts of the world. We want to get diversity of opinion into the room to really, if possible, shoot down an idea that isn't going to work. It's just really, I think, critical. Yes, I agree, Shankar. Collaboration is so important, for our day-to-day work. We sometimes negate it because it's so easy to do things ourselves right now. But when we have this richness of perspective in this process, we get better ideas. It's just a reality. There's research around this. But of course, it can be difficult, and managing that and making sure that we're getting, the right voices in the room for the right projects is just critical. But we do need to test our notions, our concepts. And the best way to do that is to have a diversity of perspectives in the room, and just getting different ideas in the room if we really want to be ahead of the curve. Because right now, everybody is looking for that next best thing, the next great thing. And so, if you really want to stand out as a leader, you really need to have that innovation mindset. And you really have to have it in a collaborative way so that you're really ensuring your ideas are really really unique and really, battle tested to some degree. And so right now, I think that is going to be something companies are going to be looking for. How do we get a uh, richer basis for our collaborations, for our innovations? And we have so many opportunities for that. You can do cross-functional work. You can bring people together and do that either virtually, in person, on boards. There's so many ways to have these kinds of conversations. But the most important thing is to make sure that you create an atmosphere of psychological safety, that people know that they're heard and listened to, and that their opinions matter, and that you're hearing them. Again, going back to that active listening and that empathy, all these pieces, they all come together because it's basically all underlying or underpinned by the same principles, which is how our mind works. And so we really want to make sure that we're managing our mindsets to our advantage. But that's not easy. We are resistant creatures at best. And again, our amygdala can really uh, get in the way if we allow it to. It can stop us from taking chances. It can stop us from doing new things. And we need to be on top of this and paying attention to that and really taking those chances so that we're optimizing what we bring to the table and that we're at the table. The other thing that we need to be aware of is time management. There's so much going on right now, and I can't tell you how many of my clients, come to me because they're overwhelmed. They have too much on their plates, and to ask them to take time out of their schedule to do scenario planning and innovative collaboration and all these things, um, it just might be the breaking point for some people. So we need to really be thoughtful about when we ask people to do these things, taking something off their plates and making sure we make room for these things. I think about Google and how they used to, I don't know if they still do, give people a day to just think through new ideas, and they've gotten some of their best ideas that way. People need time. They need time to create and innovate. And unfortunately, we're not giving it to them today. So these are some of the things to think about. How do we ensure that uh, that the atmosphere, the environment really allows for us to bring our best to work. And so, with that in mind, I will close out this presentation, but just to say that for all of us, I think this is a critical juncture in our world, in our lives. And how do we want to manage that? And how do we become more intentional about that? And how do we plan for that? Again, these were just some of the mindsets that I've been thinking about, but this could have been something that we talk about for hours. Okay, I'm doing all the talking, but something that, as a group, we could talk about for hours because it is just that consequential. We get to decide how we're going to show up in this next iteration of our world. And it's just, personally, I want to be able to show up more fully. So I'm trying to manage these mindsets. And I wish the same for all of you. And if I can be of any help, please DM me, help to you, to your teams, to your organization. These are things that I think are important and that we need to be thinking about more in order to succeed in the current reality of today. Thank you all so much for your time. And I look forward to seeing you next week when I do a LinkedIn Live with my good friend Ken Lowe. And we're going to talk about personal branding, my media experience, what I've been doing to get a little more publicity in some of the big publications. And also, we're going to be looking at an AI tool to help all of you make your working lives easier. So I hope to see you there. Thank you. Have a great day.